Caros struck the console with such force that his fist left a dent in the metal, a resounding clang reverberating throughout the warship's bridge. He couldn't fathom the scans. It seemed impossible. The humans had amassed an army of unprecedented scale, ships, soldiers, weapons, all surpassing the Draconi Invasion Force. The Empire's entire plan hung in jeopardy, and Caros realized the urgent need for action to prevent the slaughter of his species. The grizzled war scout straightened, his green scales gleaming under the harsh lights, the scar across his face twitching as he ground his teeth. The data, undeniable, had been gathered over months of secretive monitoring by Draconi scouts. All projections had indicated that the primitive humans would easily succumb to the Empire's might. But this new intelligence changed everything. Caros couldn't comprehend how the humans had concealed these numbers. Vast armies, legions of war machines, and unimaginably powerful weapons. They weren't just prepared for an invasion. They were prepared for war, for extermination. Doubt gnawed at him as he hovered over the comm switch, knowing that delivering this news would mean the invasion's cancellation and branding him a coward. Suddenly, the ship jolted, alarms blaring. A human stealth ship had locked on. "So it begins," Caros muttered. The human vessel unleashed a volley, sparking chaos on the Draconi warship. Shields strained against the onslaught but held for now. Orders to return fire were given, and Caros's crew rushed to battle stations. Energy blasts lanced out at the human vessel, but their advanced technology deflected them effortlessly. It made no sense. The humans were decades ahead in technology. A transmission from High Command flashed urgently. Caros hesitated, torn between failure and certain death. Before he could decide, an explosion rocked the ship, signaling intruders. Hulking figures poured through the breach, led by Captain Ethan Taylor. Caros and his crew prepared for close combat, their plans of invasion shattered. Plasma bolts filled the bridge as both sides exchanged fire. Caros ducked behind cover, firing at the advancing Marines. The humans moved with astonishing speed and agility, their technology far surpassing expectations. It was a battle unlike any Caros had anticipated, and the fate of his crew and species hung in the balance. As a plasma bolt struck one of the Marines, Caros caught a glimpse of something astonishing. A shimmering bubble enveloped the soldier, absorbing the impact effortlessly. The human shrugged off the blow, leaving Caros dumbfounded. Portable shield generators, something deemed decades away by Draconi researchers, were in use by the humans. They had surpassed the Draconi Empire in ways Caros couldn't fully grasp. All their plans, all their projections went up in smoke. This wasn't just a setback. It was catastrophic. Suddenly, the deck lurched beneath Caros's feet as alarms blared and smoke filled the air. The engine room breached and main power faltered. Ethan Taylor's arrival seemed inevitable. They would tear the ship apart, exposing Draconi vulnerabilities unless Caros's claw hovered over the self-destruct panel. With a trembling claw, he input his authorization code. Protest erupted among the remaining officers as the countdown commenced. Caros shouted orders for escape pods, urging his crew to flee. They charged through smoke-filled corridors, pursued by relentless human forces. In the chaos of the escape pod bay, Ethan Taylor and his Marines stormed in. Caros fought back fiercely, but Ethan's enhanced strength proved overwhelming. With desperation flooding him, Caros found himself pinned by Ethan's armored bulk. As the countdown reached 0, Caros watched his ship vanish in a blinding explosion. He went limp, realizing he was now a prisoner of the species he'd sought to conquer. Branded a failure by Draconi High Command, he now pondered a new possibility, uncovering the secret behind humanity's unparalleled strength. The war had just commenced, and Caros was determined to ensure the survival of his species. Inside the human ship's brig, Caros found himself surprised by the well-lit and clean environment, a far cry from the dark, dank cells he had anticipated. The force field at the entrance was the only indication that it was a prison. Seated on the cot, Caros observed his fellow Draconi prisoners in nearby cells, their low growls and hisses echoing through the block. Ethan Taylor entered with 2 Marines, but instead of beginning an interrogation, he pulled up a chair and set a data pad on the table. Captain Ethan Taylor introduced himself, expressing a desire for the Draconi prisoners to be treated well. He assured Caros of access to medical care, proper food, and comfortable quarters. Ethan left, leaving Caros bewildered by the unexpected treatment. Over the following days, true to Ethan's word, the Draconi were treated as guests rather than prisoners. Their wounds were tended to, and they were provided with comfortable quarters and nourishing food. Caros observed the camaraderie among the human crew, a stark contrast to Draconi culture. Each glimpse of the human ship left Caros more astonished by their advanced technology, centuries beyond anything the Draconi possessed. Ethan visited regularly, not for interrogation, but for conversation. He spoke of Earth's history and how humanity had united in the face of greater threats. As an alarm blared through the ship, Ethan informed Caros of an impending invasion by one's fleet. Urgently, Ethan asked for Caros's help in defending Earth, acknowledging the need for information to combat the invasion. Despite his internal conflict, Caros reached out and agreed to help, albeit unwilling to turn against his own people. Acknowledging Caros's stance, Ethan emphasized the importance of gathering information to defend against the invasion, hoping to prove that their peoples didn't have to be enemies. With a tentative agreement reached, Caros prepared to assist in any way he could. As Caros followed Ethan from the brig towards the bridge, where the fate of two worlds hung in the balance, he felt the weight of his choice settling on his shoulders. Turning his back on the Empire and everything he'd ever known, he looked around the human ship. The determined faces of its crew as they prepared for battle stirred something within him. Perhaps, just perhaps, he had finally found something truly worth fighting for. Clasping his fists, Caros felt the gravity of his decision. Meeting Ethan's gaze, he spoke firmly. "I'll help you stop Zorks. The Draconis cannot win this way." Ethan nodded, urging Caros to share what he knew. Together, they devised a daring plan to outwit Zorks and his Draconis fleet. Crafting a gambit involving decoy ships and the asteroid field, they aimed to lure Zorks into a trap. Caros growled his determination to infiltrate the Maelstrom, disable its weapons and communications, and neutralize Zorks. As the fleets moved into position and the plan unfolded, an insertion craft detached from the human flagship. Caros, Ethan, and a hand-picked team of volunteers, both human and Draconi, armed themselves for the mission. Inside the prototype human exosuit, Caros felt the unfamiliar yet potent fusion of human and Draconi technology. As they breached the Maelstrom's hangar, chaos erupted. Caros swiftly dispatched the guards, his enhanced speed and reflexes proving invaluable. Navigating through corridors filled with Draconi soldiers, Caros and Ethan fought side by side. They reached the primary comms relay, where Caros systematically disabled the systems, plunging the Maelstrom into darkness. Their triumph was short-lived as Admiral Zorks and his elite guard stormed in. Accusing Caros of betrayal, Zorks engaged him in a fierce duel. Drawing upon his training, Caros found an opening and struck a decisive blow, incapacitating Zorks. Standing over his fallen mentor, Caros caught his breath, supported by Ethan, who bore his own wounds. Together, they surveyed the ruins of the command center. "It's done," Caros declared. "The Maelstrom is crippled." Ethan nodded wearily. "Now we just have to hope the fleet." A brilliant flash illuminated the viewports, capturing Caros and Ethan's attention. They watched in awe as the Draconis fleet, ensnared in the asteroid ambush, succumbed to a storm of destruction. Ships shattered and broke apart, overwhelmed by the human onslaught. It was a slaughter, a rout. The Draconis had never faced a foe like this, never imagined they could suffer such utter defeat. Caros experienced a strange mix of emotions as he witnessed his people's ships burn. Relief? Yes, but also sorrow and regret. So much death, so much destruction. All because the Draconis couldn't see past their own arrogance and aggression. There had to be a better way. Meeting Ethan's gaze, Caros felt a conviction. They would find it together. Humans and Draconis would forge a new path of coexistence, not conquest. The battle was over, but the struggle for understanding and peace had just begun. In the heart of the ruined Maelstrom, Zorks lowered his blade, locking eyes with Caros. A silent plea for understanding passed between them. "Caros, listen to me," Zorks growled. "We've been deceived." Caros tensed, his claws tightening on his blade. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. "The Ctox," Zorks explained heavily. "They've been manipulating us, using us as pawns in their own conquest." Caros reeled back, realization dawning. The name sent a chill down his spine. An ancient race whispered of only in the darkest corners of the galaxy. It's impossible," Caros stammered, though he knew it was true. Zorks nodded grimly, providing evidence of the Ctox's involvement. Caros lowered his blade, the fight draining out of him. "Then everything we've done," he trailed off. Zorks shook his head. "Not for nothing," he asserted. We can still make this right, but we need allies. Caros looked to Ethan, who stepped forward, acknowledging the common enemy and goal. Ethan is right, Caros agreed. We have to stand together. As they left the maelstrom, Caros felt a sense of purpose settling over him. The path ahead would be dangerous, perhaps even impossible, but it felt right. The alliance, forged in the fires of necessity, marked a turning point, a chance to stop the Ctox and secure a better future for all. As the combined fleet assembled, a sense of tense anticipation pervaded the air. Human and Draconus crews worked side by side, loading weapons, running diagnostics, and preparing for the fight of their lives. Ethan and Caros stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the Ctox armada grow larger on the view screens. Caros could feel the weight of history on his shoulders, the fate of two species resting in their hands. No matter what happens, Ethan said quietly. It's been an honor, Caros. The Draconus commander clasped Ethan's shoulder, feeling the strength and resolve in the human's frame. The honor is mine, Ethan. Today we fight as one. As the fleets closed the distance, weapons primed and ready, Caros felt a strange sense of calm settle over him. This was it, the moment of truth, the crucible in which the future would be forged. With a roar of engines and a blaze of weapons fire, the battle was joined. The Allied ships sliced into the Ctox formation, lances of energy and showers of missiles ripping into the eldritch hulls. At the heart of the chaos, Ethan and Caros led a strike team toward the Ctox flagship. They danced through the battle, weaving past enemy fire and blasting apart any foe that stood in their way. Deeper and deeper they pushed, fighting past hordes of Ctox warriors, each more nightmarish than the last. Finally, they burst into the heart of the ship, a cavernous chamber pulsing with eldritch energy. There, waiting for them, was the Ctox leader, a being of pure nightmare, a towering monstrosity of chitinous armor and writhing tentacles. Foolish primitives, it hissed, its voice echoing inside their skulls. You cannot hope to stand against the might of the Ctox. We are the inheritors of this galaxy, the true masters of the cosmos. Ethan and Caros exchanged a glance, a silent agreement passing between them. They had come too far, sacrificed too much to be stopped now. As one, they charged, weapons blazing, war cries tearing from their throats. The Ctox leader roared in fury, lashing out with blasts of psionic energy. But Ethan and Caros would not be denied. They fought with the strength of their convictions, with the fury of two species united against a common foe. The battle was fierce and bloody, the chamber shaking with the force of their struggle. In the end, it was the Ctox leader that fell, its monstrous form slumping to the deck, victory achieved. Yet, even as they caught their breath, the ship shuddered around them. Alarms blared and lights flickered. The Ctox flagship was coming apart at the seams. Ethan and Caros raced through the collapsing corridors, dodging falling debris and gouts of flame. Finally, they burst into the hangar bay just as the ship gave a final shuddering groan. Their strike craft was waiting, engines primed. They leaped aboard, slamming the hatches shut just as the bay doors blew out, venting the hangar into space. And then they were away, rocketing out of the dying ship. As the flagship exploded behind them in a nova of light and fury, they shot out into the battle, into a scene of utter chaos. The Ctox fleet was in disarray, ships spinning out of control, firing on each other in confusion. The Allied forces pressed their advantage, tearing into the enemy ranks with renewed vigor. It was a rout, a slaughter. The Ctox, once so mighty and terrifying, were being swept aside like leaves before a hurricane. Their ships burned and broke apart, their warriors cut down in droves. At the heart of it all, Ethan and Caros flew, leading the charge, rallying their forces. They had done the impossible. They had united two species, broken an ancient conspiracy, defeated a nightmare made flesh. The battle raged on, the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. But for the first time in centuries, there was hope. Hope for a future free from manipulation and deceit. Hope for a galaxy where human and Draconus could stand side by side as equals, as allies. A new chapter was being written, a new history forged, and Ethan and Caros were at the vanguard, leading the charge into a brighter tomorrow. The Ctox leader's eyes blazed with malicious glee as it unleashed a storm of psionic energy at Ethan and Caros. The human and Draconus warriors staggered, their minds assaulted by visions of terror and despair. Yet, even as they teetered on the brink of madness, Ethan and Caros reached for each other, their hands clasping together. In that moment, something extraordinary happened. Their minds, their wills, their very essences merged, forming a bond stronger than any the galaxy had ever seen. A shimmering shield of psionic energy burst into existence around them, repelling the Ctox leader's attacks. The creature recoiled in disbelief, unable to comprehend how mere primitives could withstand its power. Ethan and Caros rose to their feet, the shield pulsing around them. They could feel each other's thoughts, each other's strength flowing through their joined hands. The Ctox leader's face contorted in rage as it gestured to a pulsing mass of energy at the heart of the chamber. "Behold the psionic harvester," it said. "With the power stolen from 1,000 conquered worlds, I shall destroy entire star systems. Your homes, your peoples will be erased from existence." Ethan and Caros exchanged a glance, horror and determination mingling in their shared psyche. They knew they had to stop the monstrosity, no matter the cost. As one, they charged the Ctox leader. The creature met them with a flurry of psionic blasts and physical strikes, but Ethan and Caros fought as one being, their movements perfectly synchronized. When the leader lashed out at Ethan, Caros was there to block it. When a wave of psionic energy threatened to crush Caros, Ethan's will was there to bolster him. They pressed their attack, driving the Ctox leader back. With each blow, they could feel its psionic defenses weakening. Now Ethan roared, both aloud and in Caros's mind. Together, they unleashed a devastating psionic blast that slammed into the Ctox leader's chest, shattering its defenses and sending it flying across the chamber. The creature crashed into the psionic harvester, its body breaking apart on impact. A shock wave of energy exploded outward, ripping through the ship. Ethan and Caros were thrown off their feet, their psionic shield flickering and dying around them. The ship began to come apart, explosions booming in the distance, bulkheads crumpling like tin foil. Ethan hauled Caros to his feet. "We need to get out of here now." They raced through the disintegrating ship, dodging falling debris and gouts of flame. In their wake, the psionic harvester detonated, consuming the Ctox flagship from the inside out. Ethan and Caros burst into the hangar bay, leaping aboard a Ctox fighter just as the deck collapsed behind them. The small craft rocketed out of the hangar, the shockwave from the exploding flagship throwing it end over end. Through the cockpit viewport, they saw the rest of the Ctox fleet in chaos, ships drifting aimlessly, weapons silent. The destruction of the flagship had shattered the quantum entanglement network, leaving the Ctox in disarray. "All ships, attack!" Ethan's command echoed on all frequencies. "The CS are vulnerable. Press the advantage." The human and Draconus fleet surged forward, weapons blazing as they tore into the CTO ships. Explosions blossomed across the void as fighter squadrons danced between the capital ships, plasma and missiles crisscrossing space. It was a maelstrom of destruction, a cataclysm unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Human and Draconus ships took hits, some exploding into plumes of fire and shrapnel, but for every ship they lost, they destroyed 3 Ctox vessels. The Allies fought with a ferocity and coordination that the Ctox could not match, driven by the bonds of friendship and the knowledge of what was at stake. One by one, the Ctox ships fell, torn apart by the relentless onslaught. And then, with a final world-shattering explosion, the last Ctox dreadnought broke apart. Space fell silent, the debris of shattered Ctox ships drifting through the void like a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen corpses. On the bridge of the Allied flagship, Ethan and Caros stood side by side, watching the aftermath of their victory unfold on the view screens. "We did it," Ethan said, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. "We won." Caros nodded, his eyes distant. "But at what cost? So many lives lost on both sides." "That's why we have to make sure this never happens again," Ethan replied. "We have to build a new order, one based on cooperation and understanding." Over the next weeks, Ethan and Caros worked tirelessly to forge a new alliance between their peoples. They created a joint task force made up of the best human and Draconus warriors, charged with hunting down any remaining CTO loyalists and destroying their weapons and technology. But as they delved into the Ctox's history, a disturbing truth came to light. Buried in the databanks of captured Ctox ships, they found records that painted a very different picture of their enemy. "The CTO weren't always like this," Caros said, poring over the ancient files. "They were once a peaceful race, dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge and enlightenment. What changed them?" Ethan frowned at the holographic display. "This," Caros said, pointing to a glowing symbol. "The Psionic Nexus, an artifact of immense power, capable of amplifying psionic abilities to godlike levels. That's how they were able to control their ships and weapons with such precision, Ethan realized. They were linked together, their minds amplified by this thing, and it drove them mad, Caros growled. The power was too much for them to handle. It warped their minds, turned them into the monsters we fought. We have to find it, Ethan said. Destroy it before it can corrupt anyone else. They pored over the data, searching for clues to the Nexus's location. They found references to an ancient civilization, one that had fought the Ctox eons ago and managed to hide the artifact away. Here, Caros said, pointing to a star map, the Aryan Expanse. The records say they built a fortress there to guard the Nexus. Then that's where we're going, Ethan declared. They assembled a team of their best warriors and set out into the uncharted reaches of the galaxy. They followed the star maps, navigating through treacherous asteroid fields and ionic storms. Their journey took them to long-dead worlds, where they fought off the savage descendants of the Ctox's victims. At last, they reached the Aryan Fortress, a massive structure carved into the heart of a dead moon. As they approached, their sensors detected a DRA's ship already docked at the airlock. Zorx's loyalists, Caros hissed. They're here for the Nexus. They embarked upon the fortress armed and ready, the corridors shrouded in darkness and twisted, echoing with the faint whispers of bygone minds. They battled their way through the Draconis fanatics, their armor marked by plasma scorch. At the heart of the fortress, they encountered the cultist's leader, a towering Draconis warrior adorned with glowing psionic runes on his scales. In his claws, he clutched a pulsating orb of energy, the Psionic Nexus. Fools, he roared. You cannot thwart the ascension of the Ctox. With this power, we shall rebuild the Empire and dominate the galaxy. Ethan and Caros charged forth, their weapons ablaze, meeting the Draconius warriors' psionic blasts with determined resolve. They fought fiercely, their minds united by the bond forged in battle, but the Draconis proved formidable, bolstered by the Nexus. As they struggled to hold their ground, a plasma bolt struck the Draconis, incapacitating him. The Nexus fell from his grasp, and Ethan, with a grim expression, delivered the final blow. Caros seized the Nexus, feeling its power coursing through him, whispering promises of supremacy and conquest. Yet, upon seeing Ethan's trust and understanding, he resisted its allure. With a roar, he smashed the Nexus, releasing a blinding pulse of energy that knocked them both down. When the light subsided, the Nexus lay shattered, its dreadful power obliterated. Ethan helped Caros to his feet, acknowledging their victory amidst exhaustion. But Ethan reminded them that the fight against power-hungry foes persists. Together they departed, leaving behind the fallen Draconis cultists, the threat of the Psionic Nexus vanquished. The alliance between human and Draconis, forged in battle and strengthened by sacrifice, heralded a new era of cooperation and understanding among the galaxy's races. Ethan and Caros, friends and brothers in arms, stood ready to guide this new chapter, as they faced the ancient stone fortress, a symbol of their triumph over darkness. With a roar, the fanatics surged forward, psionic energy crackling around them. Ethan and Caros leaped into battle, their own psionic abilities rising to meet the onslaught. The courtyard became a whirlwind of clashing blades and exploding energy bolts. Ethan evaded a psionic blast, firing his plasma rifle, while Caros deflected strikes with lightning speed. They fought seamlessly, anticipating each other's moves, but the fanatics pressed on relentlessly, driven by their twisted devotion to the Psionic Nexus. Even as they fell to plasma fire and psionic blasts, more surged forward. In the midst of chaos, the fanatic leader bellowed in rage, the Nexus pulsing brighter with each passing moment, unleashing shock waves that shattered stone and sent warriors flying. Ethan and Caros fought through the horde, their armor cracked and sparking. The Nexus's power threatened to engulf the battlefield. As they confronted the fanatic leader, they unleashed their combined psionic abilities, but the Nexus proved too strong to penetrate. The leader laughed madly, proclaiming its invincibility. Caros, his scales slick with blood, looked to Ethan with a terrible realization. There was only one way to destroy the Nexus to end its threat forever. Ethan recoiled, but Caros was resolute. With a final anguished roar, Caros hurled himself at the Nexus, merging with it in a surge of psionic energy. Ethan watched in horror as the Nexus erupted, consuming Caros and obliterating the fanatics. In the aftermath, Ethan emerged from the rubble, his armor shattered. The courtyard lay in ruins, the Nexus reduced to a scorched mark. And Caros, his sacrifice immortalized in memory, was gone. Ethan sank to his knees, overwhelmed by grief and loss. Caros, his friend, his brother, had been sacrificed to save them all. Around him, surviving warriors, both human and Draconis, gathered. They had emerged victorious, but the price had been higher than any of them could have foreseen. Ton stood nearby, his eyes filled with resolve. Caros' sacrifice would not be in vain. The alliance they had forged, the peace they had fought for, it would endure. The galaxy had been granted a second chance, a chance to heal and rebuild, and Ethan vowed to ensure it was not wasted. As they embarked on the long journey back to Earth, each step heavy with the weight of their losses, Ethan stood on the observation deck, gazing at the stars that Caros had cherished. "I'll never forget you," he whispered. "Your sacrifice, your friendship. It will live on, I swear." As the ship sailed on, carrying its weary heroes back to a galaxy forever changed, Ethan carried Caros' memory in his heart. It was a memory of brotherhood, of courage, of unbreakable bonds that had brought light to the darkest corners of the universe. The war was over, the battle won, but for Ethan, the true fight was just beginning. The fight to preserve the hard-won peace, a fight he would never abandon. For as long as he drew breath, Ethan would strive to build the galaxy that Caros had given his life to protect. A galaxy of unity, of hope, of endless possibility.